Hello guys, my name is Kyle Dixon and this is my presentation on calcium. Let me get that open really quick. Okay, awesome. So just to kind of start off really quick, some interesting facts about calcium. Calcium's actually been known for a very long time. In fact, some of the earliest known uses of calcium in lime, or calcium oxide, was used for plaster. For statues, as you can see on the left, dating as far back as 7000 BC. And then also limestone was used for centuries to make plaster and mortar for construction as well. And even the ancient Egyptians used a compound known as gypsum, which is calcium sulfate in water, to help build the Great Pyramids. So I just think it's really interesting that when we think of calcium, we think of strong bones, um, and structure to the body. And then calcium's also been used for structure for other things as well, such as buildings. And I think that's really cool. In 1808, a chemist and an inventor known as Humphrey Davy isolated calcium by mixing lime and mercury oxide. And that's a picture of him on the top right. And then there's a picture of lime down on the bottom right. So just some cool facts to kind of start off the presentation. So getting into some of the basic facts for calcium, our intake levels, the RDA for males and females, ages 14 to 18 is 1,300 milligrams per day, and that decreases to 1,000 for both sexes, ages 19 through 30. And there's that little decrease because obviously 14 to 18-year-olds are growing a lot more, and they need that they need higher levels of calcium to be able to help with that. And then the upper limits is set at 2,800 milligrams a day for males and females, 14 through 18, and then 3,000 for anyone 19 and above. So major functions of calcium. I know that when you think calcium, the first thing you think of is bones and how it's important to get enough calcium to have strong bones. And that's very true. 99% of calcium in our body is found in our bones, but it has many other functions as well. And starting off with that, it's important for the structure of bones and strengthening bones. How it does that is calcium will bond with collagen fibers by combining with phosphorus and forming hydroxyapatite. And anyways, that's what gives our bones its durability and strength. But aside from that, calcium is required for blood clotting, transmission of nerve impulses, muscle contraction, and cell metabolism. In clotting, the reason why calcium is needed is because it helps with the formation of the protein fibrin, which is essential for that. And then calcium also plays a role in cardiac muscle contraction, which I'll talk about a little bit in a later slide. Hypothesis that I read from the theory, or it's a theory from the Center of Molecular Cardiology from Columbia University, and I quote, it says, impaired calcium release causes decreased muscle contraction, systolic dysfunction, and defective calcium removal hampers relaxation, diastolic dysfunction. And just kind of goes to show the range of uses that calcium has in the body. And then with the nervous system, calcium channels allow the release of neurotransmitters from nerve cells. So many different functions. Anyways, and then important food sources of calcium. Milk and cheese are some of the more bioavailable sources, and they make up about half the calcium intake in a typical US diet. And then we also can get calcium from sources such as dark greens. But if you remember from our readings, most of the calcium from dark greens is not absorbed because it's bound to oxalic acid. But broccoli and cauliflower are excellent sources, and then also almonds. And then with canned fish, such as salmon and sardines, the reason why those are really good sources is because there's actually like a lot of tiny bones that you wouldn't notice when you're eating them, but give those canned foods their higher sources of calcium. So And with calcium deficiency, I think the hallmark of a deficient diet of calcium is you'll think of osteoporosis. That's true. Your bones become weak and brittle. And then there's also the kyphosis or dowager's hump that you'll see in a lot of elderly people. And the reason why this is because the spine experiences a loss of bone, and there are compression fractures in the spine. But other effects of deficiency of calcium include muscle cramps and spasms, weak and brittle nails, and then you have an increased risk of bone fracture. And you can also have hallucinations, memory loss, and confusion. And this is because hypocalcemia has an effect on the brain and nervous system and can cause neurological impairment. And then with toxicity, as you can see on the top right there, if you um, have an intake that is too much of calcium, you can develop those kidney stones and hypercalcemia. And I just wanted to kind of start off and say that the reason why we can have too much calcium in the body usually isn't from just a typical diet or even taking supplements, because in supplements and most foods, there's only a modest amount of calcium that is absorbed. So usually those do not pose a threat. The reason why we might have hypercalcemia or too much calcium in the blood is because of an overactive parathyroid gland, which releases calcium into the blood from the bones. Um, and some of the effects of that can be irritability, headache, kidney failure, and decreased absorption of other minerals. And it can even lead to abnormal heart rhythms. And then also nephrocalcinosis, which is calcification of the kidney. So like I said, usually this is not due to the fact that you're so much as eating too much calcium or consuming too much calcium. It's because there's an issue with the parathyroid gland. So, and then with nutrient reaction and metabolism, there's a system that I studied a little bit, and was the only thing really listed in our textbook that we studied as well, but it's called the comodulin system. And basically that's a protein that's essential for many reactions with enzymes in the body. And what will happen is 4 calcium ions will bind to a comodulin, and then that will activate it. And comodulin is important for many different reasons. One of them is the breakdown of glycogen. What will happen is comodulin will partially activate phosphorylase kinase, and then that will activate glycogen phosphorylase. And then glycogen phosphorylation breaks glycogen into glucose subunits. So very important for that. Calcium in media and literature. I read a really cool article from Johns Hopkins when I was studying this micronutrient. And what they did is they actually created a computer that could replicate the activity of the heart right before cardiac death. And they mainly focused their studies on the effect of calcium and calcium ion pumps in the heart cells. They talked a little bit about how the handling of calcium in heart cells at times can go haywire, and then that can cause an arrhythmia because there's an overload of calcium. And they basically concluded that if there is enough calcium-related electrical signals, they will simultaneously discharge in the heart and set off a lethal arrhythmia. They have a really cool picture right here created from that computer, actually. So each of those rectangles is representative of a heart cell, and then those bursts of color that you see there are propagation of calcium waves. And just a kind of quick review for all of you who might not have taken Bio 264, 265, calcium is important for cardiac muscle because it is able to control the strength and the duration of the contraction of that muscle, of those types of muscles. So in the heart. And anyways, as you can see right here, those propagation of calcium waves in each of those heart cells are very different from cell to cell. And the article talked a little bit about how that randomness is usually the reason that those arrhythmias or irregular heart rhythms can arise and eventually lead to complications and even death. So, interesting article. In conclusion, calcium has many different effects in the body. Very important to have, especially in our younger years. You want to make sure that you are increasing your peak bone mass, because eventually you hit an age where your bones cease to grow in size, and then the higher the peak bone mass, then the lower chances that you have of developing complications with osteoporosis and other things like that. So, but I also had kind of a fun video I really wanted to show you guys with. So, 1 second.
Drink your milk, kids. I don't want milk. Milk's for babies.
Yeah, babies.
Oh, yeah? Well, I happen to know that milk helps build strong bones. So drink up. Well, Mr. Miller told me he never drinks milk. Look at him.
Yeah.
Right, kids.
Oh, that's not good. Milk.
Anyways, microphone off right there. That always cracks me up. But anyways, yeah, super important. And there are my references right there. Thank you guys so much. I hope that this upload works. I've actually never done this before, but I will see you guys later.